Good evening, everyone. This is Jamie Stevenson, your first selectman. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Look forward to hearing from all of you who I know are concerned and may very likely have been impacted by at least one, if not both, of the incredible storms that we've had this summer, July 9th and September 2nd. I just wanted to give you a couple of brief rules about tonight. This is your opportunity to speak directly to the Board of Selectmen, to offer comments, to pose questions to us. We will not answer your questions in this session. We want to make sure that we get to as many people as possible that want to speak. So if you would like to speak to us this evening, please put your name and address in the chat, and we will call on you to the best of our ability in the order in which you sign up to speak. Our moderator for the evening, Town Administrator Kate Bush, will unmute you so that you can speak, and you can have 2 minutes tonight to ask your question or make your comment, and we will be taking copious notes. Please be cognizant that there are probably many other people that want to speak within this hour time frame that we've allotted for this evening. As of right now, we have about 65 participants, but we're really happy that you're here, and we look forward to hearing from you. So without further ado, we will get started. Just give us a moment to work through the administration. And again, if you wish to speak, please put your name and address in the chat function. And I have our first 3 speakers here, so we'll get started. I would like to call on first Mr. Adi Prakash. Kate, please unmute Adi Prakash.
Hey, Jamie, thank you. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay.
Yes, we can hear you, Adi.
Thanks, Jamie. Thank you, everybody. And firstly, thank you for providing us this opportunity to share with you and to have this discussion. So Adi Prakash, I'm on Crimmins Road, 23 Crimmins Road, the 4th house down from the bottom. We've been here for about 4 or 5 years now in September, and we've seen some storms in the past, in the 5 years that we've been here. We've seen some of our neighbors get affected by it, but nothing that really impacted us in the way it has impacted over the last 2 months, really, from June and July. And if I could, since we're doing this on Zoom, if we were doing this in person, I would have preferred to carry pictures and show what I'm about to talk about. But if it's okay, I'd like to share my screen and share a couple of pictures just to give everybody a sense of what it is that we're dealing with.
Kate, can you allow Adi to share his screen?
No, actually, I can't, not without making him a co-host.
Okay, that's okay then. So I'll just try and talk over it. So like I said, we live down on Crimmins Road 23. We've had 2 issues that came through, one during Elsa, and the pictures would have justified what I'm saying a bit more. So in our backyard, we've had during Elsa over 5.5 feet of water, and our backyard's almost half an acre. And when I say 5.5 feet, it's that 5.5 feet that covered that entire backyard. And as you can imagine, when you have that much water in the backyard, that let in about 1.5 foot inside our low level. And that was during Elsa. So having seen that, we did the preparations ahead of Ida. We brought in about 120 sandbags. We put in plywood. We barricaded our garageway and any entrance to the house. And despite that, this time we got over 6 feet of water in the backyard, right, across half an acre of backyard. And that picture really does justice to what I'm describing. And that brought in with it this time about 2.5 feet of water in our lower level. So just as we completed finishing up the work, repairing and rebuilding from Elsa, this time we had Ida, which came in with that amount of water and broke it. So I'd just like to state that this is, everyone who's flooded, I feel for them, having lived through it. But I do want to emphasize that we bought the house knowing that we were on a floodplain. And we've seen flooding, minor flooding, but none that breached our property in the way it did. And this level of flooding, getting about 6 feet of water outside the house that caused our garage door to buckle, bringing in about 3 feet of water inside, is certainly not something that seems normal. And it seems something that's been getting worse, as is evident from just these two storms. So I'd just like to put that out there and continue to look to the town to help us with the situation, please.
Thank you very much, Addie. I'd like to next call on Thomas Tyler. Thomas, I'm sorry, I didn't get your address. If you could please state your address.
Hi, I'm at 401 West Avenue,
Thank you.
and that's where I live. And I own two houses at 201 West Avenue, 201 and 201 and a half. They're located between Fairfield Avenue and Rings End. I'm a civil engineer. I'm familiar with drainage structures. I have some knowledge of hydraulics and drainage design. Both basements in the houses were flooded on July 9th, and the driveway was washed out to the house and back. It's a gravel driveway. After I made all the repairs, the same thing happened over again on September 1st. In the interim, I had done a study of the drainage of the neighborhood, and I sent a pretty detailed letter to Public Works and asked them to take a look at it and make some improvements. So you can imagine my frustration when I was flooded out again on September 1st. What I found on my study of August 1st was that the catch basins in the neighborhood, they're either not there or they're poorly positioned. They're out of date. They're not maintained. And this was all contained in a pretty comprehensive study I did and sent to Public Works. I personally witnessed the flood of September 1st by standing out there in the middle of the night and watching all the work I had done to repair these basements and this driveway just ripped apart by an even worse storm. I saw the catch basins were subject to a lot of bypass. There was a lot of jump over by the way that the grates were positioned. And the catch basins at the SAG at the base of Fairfield Avenue and West Avenue were blocked. And they simply acted as fountains to just spit the drainage back out that had been gathered uphill on Fairfield Avenue. I realize that there's a lot of other problems on the job, and there are large scale capital improvements would be required, such as the main water courses. But I have to point out that the basis of design, according to the Darien Drainage Manual, is a 25-year flood. That's a 5-inch per hour rainstorm. That would be for a 15-minute duration, which means you get 1.25 inches of rain in 15 minutes. That's a lot more than what we witnessed the other night. So there's worse to come, and it doesn't even meet the design criteria. My suggestion is, presently, is that we should maintain what we have. We should update the catch basin heads, position the gratings correctly, make double gratings instead of taking gratings and turning them sideways, which is contrary to standards. We should increase the size of the chambers. We should equip them with curb pieces and debris hoods inside the chambers. And we should add curbs along the road to concentrate the drainage so that the catch basins are effective. I appreciate you listening. And these are short term, but it's something that we can do immediately. And it's not so large of a capital improvement. But, the trunk lines are another matter. And that's an expensive endeavor requiring maintenance of traffic and a lot of excavation. So I appreciate it. And I wish someone would get back to me on my letter I sent to Public Works and also the maintenance requests, the work order requests that I sent in right after the flood of September 1st. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tyler. I have next on my list, Mr. Carl Alto, 36 Coach Lamp.
Hi. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Carl Alto. I live on 36 Coachland. During heavy rain events, we get water from Norotan Heights that comes down and forms a lake in the middle of Coachland Lane in front of my house. The lake can be 2 to 3 feet high, and a motorist was stranded in the lake in July. In fact, I have a prop. This is the poor guy in his BMW SUV that stalled out and was totaled in front of the house. This was during Elsa in July. From there, the water flows into my basement and into Saltbox Lane. We purchased the house 5 years ago. We've had water in the basement 3 times, twice this year. And this despite a full basement sump system with 2 pumps. We sustained 5 figures worth of damage again in Ida. Since we can't keep the water out of the basement, we're considering making the basement unfinished, which is disappointing to lose the usable space in the home and the associated loss of value in the house. Our other option is to move. In the time I have left, I'd like to talk about future events. I'm a meteorologist and did extensive work in hydrology in the Weather Service. I'm sure it's not a surprise to anyone on this call, but heavy rain events, the ones over 5 inches, have increased 300% in the Northeast in the last 40 years. Ida was extreme, but there is nothing particularly extreme about Elsa in July. Events like that will happen time and time again. I'm personally, as a homeowner, operating under the assumption that an event like Elsa in July will occur at least once in the next 5 to 10 years. And I think we need, as a town, to make decisions accordingly. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Alto. I'd like to call next on Kristen Jordan, 19 Renshaw Road.
Hi, thank you very much for hosting this meeting, Jamie. I appreciate your time and effort in addressing this serious issue. I live at 19 Renshaw Road, and we've been in this house 12 years. In the last 12 years, our crawl space, which is just a concrete floor, has flooded 3 times. And in the last of those 3 times, they were all in the last 3 years, but 2 were in the last 2 months with Elsa and Ida. So our house was built up on an elevated amount of grade, and the crawl space was put below it with flood vents. So the flooding can go in and out of the crawl space, which is great. But the flooding is just, as most people know, so severe. The town hall soccer fields across from us, that always becomes a lake, and then the water gushes across the street, causing impassable roads. And I just wanted to throw out a few ideas. One would be to potentially lower the town hall fields, so it would be more of a catch basin of water. I don't know if that's feasible. I'm not an engineer. When this happened 3 years ago, I talked with the town about the creek and what can be done to handle the water better. They said $1 million study was done, and what needed to happen was that the grading needed to be changed and the creek needed to be widened, but going to be millions of dollars, and that was not feasible. I think with this state of urgency where so many properties are losing value in Darien, that this is something that definitely should be considered and addressed. I was also wondering if flood mitigation assistance from FEMA is being looked at. I know that the government is trying to help towns that are facing these kinds of challenges. And just wondering if we can do something with storm ponds or rain gardens, or if our sewage capacity needs to be increased. So again, these are just ideas. I just want to let everyone know for Elsa, we had 2 feet of water covering our whole half-acre yard. For Ida, we had 3.5 feet of water in the back. We had 4.5 feet on the side. So our entire crawl space was full. Fortunately, our ground level, main level has not been touched, but I feel for the people that are continuously losing property on the ground level of their homes. So I just hope this issue is addressed by the town and taken seriously.
Thank you very much, Kristen. I'll call next on Cynthia Fier. I'm sorry, I'm not pronouncing your last name right.
That's okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, but please
Okay.
tell me how to say your last name properly.
Ferreira.
Ferreira, thank you, Cynthia, 9 Thomasina Lane.
Yes. Okay, I was trying to turn on my video. So thank you very much for organizing this meeting and for giving us an opportunity to speak. I agree with Kristen. This is a very important issue. I live at 9 Thomasina Lane. I have 2 issues I'd like to raise. One is that I am concerned about the available drainage available to our street in particular. I did see during Ida, the water was not able to go down the storm drains that are available to our street. It was coming up pretty far up our yard and our neighbors' yards, several neighbors' yards. So I am concerned about the size of the drainage that is available there, the size of the pipes, the maintenance of those pipes and the cleaning schedule around those pipes. And I would implore that that becomes a regular process. We have had someone come out now post Ida, but my issues particularly that affected me and my family at 9 Thomasina Lane relate to both the events that happened over the last 2 months, both Elsa and Ida. In both instances, and Ida was worse than Elsa, we have a house that we bought over 10 years ago that has a walkout lower level. The reason we bought the house was that so my elderly mother could live with us because it is set up that way. Her lower level, the lower level is her lower level, it's her living space. She was completely flooded out during Elsa. And in the 10+ years we've been in this house, we have never had an issue. We noticed an unusual flow of water coming from what looked like an area behind us on Pleasant Street. We did some of our own basic investigation and found nothing that would raise any eyebrows. During Ida, it was substantially worse. There was a river running down our backyard, again, flooding us. We had done some outside remediation. We thought we were good. We started rebuilding downstairs because again, I'm trying to get my mother to a safe place. We bought a home that has an electric ladder on a staircase that goes downstairs. She's now walking up the stairs. She's 85 and she's living on our level. So I am concerned about her safety. So, but during Ida, it was so much worse. We had about 3 feet of water in our basement or her lower level, which is again, a walkout lower level. The water was flooding in from Pleasant. What we've subsequently discovered is that there is a broken storm drain pipe in clear view on a house on Pleasant Street that connects to the town storm drain. I have been begging the Department of Public Works to please investigate and please fix this because I am so concerned that if this doesn't get remediated immediately, we will no doubt have another issue. I cannot rebuild. I'm facing the same issues previous speakers have said, which is, do I move? You know, I can't even move. I can't sell my house for any value. The fair market value has now tremendously deteriorated. And I feel like I'm at an impasse and I don't know what to do. So I would just appreciate any support, and any FEMA support as well would be helpful for all of the town's residents to deal with this important issue.
Thank you very much. I'll next call on Chris Valentino, 5 Overbrook.
Thank you, Jamie. We moved in on, we're new owners of a log cabin at 5 Overbrook Lane. We moved in on July 2nd, 2021. During both storms, there's a pond across the street called Hope Pond, which flooded and broke down our front wall. After the first storm, we replaced it. After the second storm, it broke it down again. We're on 1.7 acres and we had about 4 feet of water covering the entire property. During the first storm in Elsa, we sustained damage mostly outside. During the second storm, we sustained 2.5 feet of water on our ground floor and completely submerged our crawl space underneath. Not to mention tremendous damage to our landscaping, driveways, trees, shrubbery. As you know, FEMA doesn't cover, flood insurance doesn't cover any damage outside of your house. It's only walls in. And the concern that we have is that that flooding seems to happen anytime Hope Pond takes on a lot of rain in a short burst of time. And these past two storms had that sort of characteristic. There's a very low and damaged barrier wall surrounding this pond, and really only a matter of time before it overflows again. It flows over the entire street, and it flows into our house and rages towards our front house, our front door. We'd like to appeal to the board to take necessary steps to protect Hope Pond better and to take some mitigation efforts. I've subsequently read a watershed evaluation of the Goodwise River conducted back in November 2009 by Malone and McCroom. And in that study, there were several items raised as potential solutions for this problem, although none of them were followed. There was an item to remove dam 14 and reshape the upstream channel, which they said would reduce floodwater significantly. There was also talk of the replacement of the culverts or adding additional culverts on Overbrook Lane. There's two right now, perhaps adding a third or a fourth. And they felt that the replacement of the culverts would increase and reduce the backwatering in Hope Pond by 3.5 feet, which is quite significant. And there was also some mitigation efforts in terms of removing dam number 12. What I'd like to propose is
30 seconds.
Is that the committee go back and review a study, a 400-page study they spent a lot of time and effort on back in 2009, because there seemed to be a lot of good ideas in that, and perhaps things that could be implemented to ease everybody's pain, not just mine. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chris. Jennifer DeJesus from the UPS store.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to say how sorry I am to hear all of these heartbreaking stories. And I'm confident that the town will find some mitigation options. But just to quickly share our experience, my husband, Marcos, and I own the UPS store in the Goodwives Plaza. And sadly, I think all of the units in that plaza were impacted. For us, we had at least a foot and a half of water in our store. And the outcome is, obviously a lot of our inventory had to get thrown out. Most of our equipment is completely unusable and basically trashed. My daughter's giving me words to say.
That's
my
okay.
6-year-old. So, and sadly, as we met with our franchise consultant, we have to basically completely gut and remodel the store because 4 or more aspects of the store have been negatively impacted by the severity of the damage. All of our furniture and fixtures had absorbed the water and now are falling apart underneath. So we did have significant impact, and I do hope that FEMA will come through and give our town some relief. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jennifer. Colleen Lundy, Hecker Avenue.
Hi, thank you so much. We are at 57 Hecker. We just moved in last year in September, knowing full well that we were in a flood zone. We are bordering the Stony Brook here. And we kind of did so also knowing that there had been, nothing heard of in this kind of realm in the past, or at least that anyone could remember. But during both storms, we had the first storm, our entire backyard was filled with at least 4 feet of water, and our basement similarly 4 feet of water. Hecker Avenue was a complete river. It comes from not up and over the side of our property, but rather the bend of the brook. It basically, the rush can't follow the stream and comes kind of flowing straight through our backyard into Hecker. And then Ida was worse. The current is so strong that the 4 feet of water in our yard, and then, you know, at this point, Ida 6 feet of water in the basement. But the current was so much worse that our picket fence in the front that was set in concrete was ripped up and washed away. And, you know, from what I understand, people, you know, like we saw people getting rescued from Hecker, from their cars, and we you know that other people directly in the area have been, you know, significantly affected as well. But I think we're just kind of wondering, because, you know, we knew that we were in a flood zone, but we also knew that, you know, nothing had been happening at all before this past year. We're kind of trying to kind of figure out and pinpoint what is so different. Obviously, I know, you know, storms like this are going to, you know, become worse and more frequent. But, you know, we look to things like, you know, dredging the brook that I know had been brought up, and whether or not that is something that needs to happen. Or also things, you know, like someone was mentioning to me that, you know, are there questions about Norotan Commons and the construction there changing just the hydraulics of the land? And I have no idea about that. But, you know, we reached out to FEMA, and unfortunately, as I said, nothing had ever been brought up against this property in the past. So we are kind of at a loss, and as everyone pointed out, wondering, do we have to move and take more than a significant loss on our property, or, you know, prepare to, you know, be in this situation where we're just under 6 feet of water every time it's a bad storm, and hope that, you know, we're safe at the same time. So thank you so much for listening, and we appreciate the time.
Thank you very much, Pauline. I'll go to Karen Sadowski, 14 Grove Street.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
First off, thanks, Jamie, and everybody who's participating on this call. Appreciate your time. So I live at 14 Grove Street. It's an apartment building. And in these past 2 storms, our parking lot literally has flooded. The first time it was over 1 foot of water, had to move multiple cars. Second time had to move our cars twice. 20 Grove Street, where there was storage units. Mine, I lost everything in my storage unit. There was over 14 feet of water. The Flour, Salt, and Water Bakery lost everything. We didn't have power for 2 days. They came here and checked the drains on the front of Grove Street. There's only 1 drain. The whole street was flooded. There's only 2 drains in the parking lot, which doesn't accommodate the amount of water that we saw in Ida. There's also a stream back there, a little brook. And I was talking to the gentleman who owns the melting pot, and he said when they cleaned that out 16 years ago, they didn't have a problem. So you know, he was suggesting they clean that out again. There's just there's nowhere for this water to go. Even if you go up the side street where Uncle's Deli is, that was totally flooded. The fire trucks came here from Darien during that Ida that evening, and there was nothing they can do because there was so much water and nowhere for it to go. So we're hoping that they, you know, look at the drainage. I think that's a huge problem. You know, sorry for everybody who lost stuff. You know, I lost a lot of personal stuff, and I did submit a letter to the EOC to see if FEMA is going to be doing anything to help. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. We'll go to Ellen, is it Paulzak?
Pavelchuk, thank you so
Pavelchuk,
much.
thank you. Thanks, Ellen.
First of all, thank you very much for this meeting, to you, to the other town officials, and to our fellow participants. I want to stress, first of all, that my husband and I were at 31 Bailey Avenue. We are not in a designated flood zone. let me just repeat that. We're not in a flood zone. We've never had a drop of water in our house or garage in the 23 years we've lived here. Up until Storm Ida, we were not impacted by Storm Elsa. On the night of September 1st, we lost our 3 cars, our furnace, everything in our garage, and everything in our finished lower level, when a wall of water over 3 feet high slammed into the back of our house. Needless to say, since we've never had flooding in our yard, on our driveway, in our house, and we're not in a flood zone, we were completely unprepared for this. Everything that was hit by the flood is a total loss. So to start, we have a number of questions for town officials. One is, do you currently have a real drill down understanding of which components of the water carrying infrastructure failed and exactly why they failed? If you don't, are you pursuing this, and will there be a report available for residents to read? Are you gathering forensic evidence to analyze this disaster, predict future ones, and see what you can do to mitigate the threat? We provided, in addition to the report to emergency management for FEMA, we provided a report to the town on September 16th, copied you in, Jamie, which provided a timeline and detailed, in our case, unusual characteristics of the flooding. Very rapid rise, equally rapid recession, which suggested, at least to us, the blockage and release of stream flow. So we hope, if you haven't investigated this, that you will be doing so very shortly. We'd like to know how this problem scales up or down. That is, if in our next storm we get half the amount of rain over the same amount of time, will we have 1.5 feet of water rather than over 3 feet of water in our basement? In other words, what are the infrastructure limits? Do we know what they are and what to expect?
30 seconds.
Thank you. Are we correct in assuming that the flood zones will have to be redrawn to include those properties that were flooded during Ida? This will affect property values. It's very expensive. We have to decide also, move or stay, buy flood insurance, install sub pumps. Look, we're not expecting miracles, but the very worst thing that can happen is that the town is not transparent with us as to what can be done and what will be done, and just goes on with business as usual. We really need this to be addressed. Thank you so much, Jamie. Thank you to the other officials there, and thank you to my fellow participants.
Thank you very much, Ellen. We'll turn to Michelle Garland, 19 Old Kings Highway South.
Hi, Jamie, and everyone on this call. And it has been really difficult to listen to what people suffered through on the night of the 1st. I work in an office building at 19 Old Kings Highway South. We're located on the 1st floor of that building. And we, like so many other businesses near the Goodwives River, experienced severe flooding. We're unable to use our office, and we'll be displaced for probably the next few months for building remediation. But I'm hoping that the town can assist businesses in these areas by working to develop some solutions that would prevent this situation from occurring in the future, specifically with any kind of proactive prevention that could happen with the Goodwives River overflowing the way we think it did on the night of the 1st, and we were affected somewhat in July as well. So thank you so much, and I look forward to working with the town and hearing any solutions the town can provide for all of these issues.
Thank you, Michelle. I have Mr. Brett Haas, but no address.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I'll type it in the chat here. It's 6 Andrews Drive.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, actually, I'd like to build a little bit on what Michelle said as well. Since we also live right along Goodwives River, and us and our neighbors were affected by both of the floods recently. And when we bought the place, we were thinking like, yeah, maybe the river can, overflow outward. But this is basically like, it's as if Goodwives River expands in width by like a factor of, 5 or 10 or something like that. So we're thinking, we were thinking about, what happens upstream in Goodwives River? Are there multiple water sources going into there? So I just, if there is one takeaway that I can try to, convey, it's if there's anything that can be done with the infrastructure or the water that goes into Goodwives River. We had a few feet of water outside. We had our crawl space flooded, our garage flooded, and like probably like others, like as soon as we finished, fixing things, it happened again. We had like our neighbor's driveway, washed away twice, like our son's play set, which is like bolted to the ground, like flowed away down the river. So we had to redo that and our grass and everything. So, we're hoping that there's something that can possibly be done related to the river. Yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brett. I'll turn to Mike Seib, 23 Cherry Street.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. My wife and I bought our home on Cherry Street, 23 Cherry Street, in March 2020. First-time home buyers. We chose Darien over a significantly bigger house in Westport, because we want to be in Darien. This is where we want to start our family. This is where we want to be. And we did start our family here. We had a baby girl in October 2020. She's 11 months, getting ready for our first year birthday party here in a couple weeks. When we bought the house, I was told, hey, don't finish your basement. You get a few inches of water from neighbors who have been here for decades. And in both storms, the water was up to the rafters in the basement. Our backyard had easily 5 foot of water. The second storm in September was significantly worse than the first storm. I had my wife evacuate at 11 p.m. and walking out our front yard, the water was up to her waist, holding my 11-month-old, and then drove a horrific drive up to Wilton to our parents' house. So, I guess what I would say is, I'm not the only one on this street with little kids. There's a kid down at the end of the street, at the very end of Cherry Street. His name's Mac. He's 18 months old. He was rescued by boat. The water was like 5 foot deep down there. He was pulled out by a couple teenage, volunteer firefighters by boat, at like 3 a.m. in the morning in the middle of the storm. So, I know everybody's on here talking about their houses and their property value and everyone's upset, but I guess the message that I would want to send here is, right in this little triangle of houses on Cherry Street, there are 4 families with children under 18 months old. And one of them was getting rescued by boat. My wife was taking my daughter out with water practically up to her waist. So, I think this is a much more serious problem than just, houses getting water in their basements and all of that. Like, this, obviously there's another storm coming, and, if one of these boats capsizes, I guess my question for the town is who's responsible. So, I think this is very serious. This is extremely serious, and, action needs to be taken immediately. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mike. Josh Smith. I'm sorry, Josh, I don't have your address. Josh Smith.
I think it might be under Chris Smith.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't able to unmute. Yes, it's Josh Smith. We're at 18 Saltbox Lane.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to share our concerns regarding the recent flooding events. It's clear that global climate change is here. It's wishful thinking that the storms of July 9th and September 1st are events we will never experience again. We do appreciate that there are some storms for which no amount of infrastructure could handle, but we believe it's time for the town to invest in flooding mitigation now. Second to family, for most, their home is the largest financial and emotional investment. While as individual homeowners, we can pour money into remediation and sadly repairs, the need for the community-wide planning is here. The time to spend tax dollars on engineering design to help with flooding is here. Parts of Saltbox Lane were devastated. The west side of our street receives water from Stanton Road, Gardner, Coachland. Residents on Saltbox Lane and Saltbox Lane East reported water gushing up from storm drains during the storms. There are easements behind the east side of our homes that have not been cleared out in decades, and we routinely have clogged storm drains. Addressing flooding on a larger scale is needed. Dealing with flooding individually can shunt water to our neighbors, compounding an already grave situation. Please help us protect our investments, help us prevent the loss and displacement that so many have suffered. When the time comes for us to move from our homes, we would like to be able to report that while perhaps our homes did flood in 2021, the town of Darien invested in the future and helped our coastal community deal with flood prevention and mitigation. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Tom Ross, 9 Pasture Lane.
I don't have anybody by that name. If person could raise their hand.
Okay, we'll move on to Danny from Vivalas. Danny Porcelli.
Hi, yeah, I was just unmuting. I don't know if you could hear me. Thank you for having this meeting. I just wanted to get on here and say, you know, I own Vivalas Deli. Flooding on Heights Road has always been an issue. I've been there for 10 years, and I could say we probably had about 15 floods. None to this, to the extent of the last 2. Back in July, we had 30 inches of water, and in September, we had over 5 feet of water. I lost everything. My business is still currently closed. We are rebuilding the business. Literally had to gut the whole entire store and lost everything we have. With COVID going on, it's very hard to buy equipment. It's just been an uphill battle. I did have hope that this project that Federal Realty is doing was going to help the flooding issue on Heights Road. And, you know, being there and watching the construction and everything, they never did anything on Heights Road to fix the flooding issue. I understand they put these tanks in, and, you know, it was a major renovation. They put these holding tanks in that worked for the water behind, which I'm guessing helped. I'm no engineer, but the issue has always been on Heights Road. Every time we get a flash flood warning, you could guarantee Heights Road is going to flood. I'm just hoping that we could look further into this. I don't know if it's make Federal or, you know, all the work going on. Maybe they could put some kind of system in place under the road, under the parking lot. I feel like there is space to hold back that rainwater and, you know, release it to, you know, some kind of mitigation system. Like I said, I lost everything I have, and I really have no choice but to rebuild because I have a lease. I can't get out of this. This is my only income. I live in town. I have 5 children, and I'm just hoping the town could take a deeper look at this. And with all of the work and the construction going on, maybe something can be done to hold back the water. Like I said, the issue is on Heights Road. It was never in the shopping center of Stop and Shop and Walgreens and Equinox. And, you know, as long as I've been around, I've never remembered them having an issue. So, you know, hopefully we could just look into this more, and, you know, I could continue my business and try and keep going. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Danny. Doug Bora.
I couldn't locate him on the list. Doug, if you're here, could you raise your hand? I'm not seeing.
Okay. We'll go on to Tony Zhang.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here. And my home is on 28 Cherry Street. I mean, I'm the second person from that street to speak now. And actually, we bought our house 5 years ago. We were aware we are in the flood zone, but from the record shows the flood was at worst getting to our crawl space, and it was far between, like 10, 15 years happened once. So it wasn't such a bad thing probably to begin with. But in the 5 years since we bought a house, we had been flooded 4 times. And I mean, twice in 2018, I think. They always come in pairs, and twice in the past 3 months or 2. And especially the last 2, the water get into our first floor. The first time it was like a 3-inch water in our first floor. And the second time it was like a 2 to 3 feet. And so my worry is about, seems like it's happening in a much higher frequency. And so it's like especially if after remodeling, will the flood come tomorrow? Basically, that's something really worries me. And we were seeking help, for example, something like to lifting our house and things like that, try to mitigating the damage in the future. And also, I'm also interested in what plans the town has to prevent or mitigating the flood damage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. Tom Zipster.
Hello. Yes, I just.
Oh, I can't hear you, Tom. Are you unmuted? Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah, I live at 96 Rose Lane, and we live on the Norotan River. It has historically been usually ankle deep. We have lived here for about 7 years, never had any water issues. Most of our street has not had water issues. The town added the drainage on Park Lane about 5 years ago, and that still did not cause any water issues. What did change in this area was Stanford added about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, they added these large culverts off of Oakdale, and they have added a ton of water into the river. And while we flooded in Ida, we did not flood in Elsa, but both storms has brought just a ton of debris and junk and mud into our yard, so much so that it has destroyed a 300-foot fence. I recently had to pull out 7 truckfuls of debris. And this looks like it's just coming more and more from Stanford. And we don't know who to talk to because this isn't really a Darien issue. It's just being dumped from Darien. Dumped from Stanford. So, and we did flood in our house this time because of so much water. That's all I have.
Jamie, you're on mute.
Thank you. Doug Smith from Catherine Street.
I don't have a Doug Smith. I don't have anybody by that name. If you could raise a hand. Okay. I think we got him.
Got me?
Yes.
Good, thanks. I'm the owner of 10 Catherine Street. My sister and her 2 teenage children live there. So every time it floods, it hasn't quite got into the house and the past floods. So I kind of feel for folks that have their basements flooded, their crawl space, but this time it got into the first floor of the house, and it's only a 1-floor house. So everything they own is shot. So, I mean, I just hope the town, you know, puts some resources in and looking to see what they can do to help mitigate, you know, further flooding. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we have Eric Jokinen. I'm sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. Please correct me.
No worries, Jokinen. Thank you
Jokinen.
for giving us a
There you
chance
go.
to speak. It's good to hear from everyone in the Darien Flood Support Group here who, you know, we all know what we've been going through this summer. It's been a nightmare. I also took a family with small children out into the storm, you know, late at night when alarms started going off, and we walked out with our family and our dog to a neighbor's house. But we are also not in a flood zone and had no idea that, you know, we would be facing water issues like this and battling the water. We're also up on a private association road, so we're in a bit of a unique situation, but like others, we've seen storm drains that are just not able to handle the volumes of water that are now being thrown at them. And once these storm drains fail, the water has to go somewhere. And in our case, it goes right down our driveway, right through our garage, and into the basement and flooding it several feet deep. We've been, you know, had a number of things destroyed a couple times in a row now this summer. And I wake up every day and go to weather.com and figure out, okay, how much time do I have to prepare before the next storm is going to hit us? So we're reeling and getting rocked over and over again. And of course, don't have flood insurance, and it's all out of pocket. And given how busy everyone is in terms of contractors and fixing, we're down to being our own remediators at this point. But our, you know, comment to the town is to kind of say that, you know, there are people who are, we live in this town, we're also up on a private road. We can't necessarily talk to the city about what's going on, but we're suffering damage. We have, you know, drainage that's inadequate. And we don't want to be, you know, forgotten with our problems up here, and are struggling in ways similar to other people. But, you know, it's not like we've got a river or anything nearby. So even people who are out of flood zones are dealing with all these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And I think our last comment is for Mr. Bartone on Crimmins.
Hello, everyone, and thanks, Jamie, and everyone for having this meeting tonight. Just wanted to start by saying that we've lived here for 19 years on Crimmins Road, and what started out as a small little stony brook has turned into a raging monster. The amount of water that's coming over Renshaw Road is just, it's unbelievable. And I must say I was really moved, when someone on Cherry Street was talking about the dramatic, rescues and escapes from their homes. I'd like to say that, we have a structure in place to address this. And I believe that's what's missing from this whole equation. We have to come to grips with climate change, which we know is upon us, but we have to come to grips with the fact that we've overbuilt the town. When you are, making improvements to homes, expansions, additions, larger driveways, bigger patios, that water has to go somewhere. And it's coming down the streams and brooks of Darien and into people's homes. So, one mindset I'd like to address is the mindset that this is the downstream people's problems, because it's not. It's all of us. Everyone in town contributes to stormwater. And as a result, I've made a suggestion to Jamie and some other people that we create a stormwater authority to address this issue, looking at the successes other towns such as New London have had in taking a formalized approach, raising revenues, and going after some of these projects. What I've seen is, we're trying to minimize the impact to the taxpayer, and that's coming as an expense. And that's what we're seeing. This overall situation has been in motion for decades now. There's studies going back to the 50s. And I think we need to take a real gut check and start moving on this. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Ray. And I see one more comment, Vicki Campbell from 25 Renshaw.
Hi there. Yes, I've lived at 25 Renshaw for almost 20 years. And the last time I flooded before these two recent storms was 14 years ago when I had a 4-day-old baby and a toddler. Since that time, we have put in a sump pump and put in a whole basement system, and we've literally been dry for 14 years. In the July storm, we had about 8.5 inches and lost a decent amount of just stuff. In this past storm, in those final moments as you're trying to grab whatever you think is close by, my husband was standing in the basement lifting stuff to me on the stairs, and we hear pop, 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 pop. And that was the water coming down our outdoor stairs that blew off our basement door. And with that gush of water that came in, my husband watched the washer and dryer move and then completely topple over our refrigerator. That I have 2 teenage boys, so I had just been to Costco and had filled the refrigerator and our chest freezer with a exorbitant amount of food. At that point, I called 911 because we didn't know what to do. And amazingly, Norotan Fire Department responded within moments. I don't know if it's funny or not, but I called 911 twice in that situation. And my son is actually a volunteer fireman, and he responded to the call. He was at the fire station when his own address came up on his alert that they had called 911. So lo and behold, out in front of my house, my son shows up, my 17-year-old son, reporting to a 911 call at his own house. The way the fire department handled it, the fireman in charge that evening wouldn't let my son go around the back of the house to see what was going on, even though he's seen quite a bit in his time as a volunteer. He made my son stay in the front as they assessed the situation. And due to the fact that the water had risen at this point over 4 feet, our electrical panel was in the basement and we could not shut off the electricity. Therefore, we were evacuated at 1:30 in the morning. We drove our cars to Hinley to get to higher ground as we're calling people in bed trying to find a place to sleep for the night.
30 seconds.
I find this whole thing is, I'm exhausted. It's 20 days in and we're nowhere near done. We lost our washer, dryer, refrigerator, chest freezer, our entire furnace, our electrical panel, and our oil tank that was half full moved 6 inches, which has since been completely emptied, dried out, and refilled. And we lost every content in the basement. We had 5.5 feet of water. I don't have a Christmas ornament that my children made or any ornament left to speak of. This has just gone on way too long, and I can't do it again. And I feel like everyone else. I don't know what the next situation is.
Thank you, Vicki. Laura Giobi.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Laura Joby. I've lived at 2 Kelsey Street in Darien for probably 39 or 40 years. This is certainly not new. I have to agree with Mr. Bartone, who spoke several persons ago, that the town needs to create a stormwater committee, someone to oversee it, not just to look at the moment here when we're all in the flood situation. We've all lost things, and I certainly feel for everyone. I also lost everything that was in my first floor. So this is something that all of us have certainly gone back in time. 2007 was the last large flood. We did a lot of mitigation on our property to avoid it, but these 2 last floods, it didn't matter. I had 4 feet of water, and it's not just me. Kelsey Street, I think you spoke to someone who was on Catherine Street and also Moore Street. These all kind of the streets that run toward, there's a culvert at the back that goes toward the Norotan River. Some time ago, the DOT put in a pipe incorrectly, so it doesn't help the situation. The town continues to overbuild. I mean, we really need to enforce our EPA rulings and the ability on limiting people of what they can build, how large they can extend. All of this, you know, taking away of surfaces that will take water in and drain them, removing of trees doesn't help. I mean, the town has to really take note to start enforcing the rules that are in place. I understand that it's a revenue, but then at the back end, we're spending more money to try and mitigate or take over houses that completely flood or try and fix roads. So, I mean, at some point, the town has to decide, maybe we just need to stop the overgrowth, you know, deal with the impervious surfaces, you know, just like I said, we have rules in place. We need to utilize them. We need to keep them going. And that's the committees that are in place. That's the selectmen. You all have a part in this. And we, you know, the townspeople put you in these positions so that you can push through these regulations and make sure that they're utilized. And, you know, kind of look to the town people versus the builders, because that's kind of where we've been in the last 15 years. The builders seem to keep building and we seem to keep having more and more floods. So all I can say, I think the Stormwater Committee would be a good thing, but not just for a year or two, something to go into the future to mitigate this, you know, and to stop, you know, and maybe it's going to cost the taxpayers to put in better storm drains, to mitigate, you know, places around town.
30 seconds.
You know, it's not just one section. One gentleman mentioned it's not just one area of Darien. It affects every area, and everyone is pushing through or using stormwater or being affected by stormwater. So I just ask this Board of Selectmen to take this opportunity to please put the rules we have in place and let's start enforcing them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. Our next and last speaker this evening will be Melissa Ribello.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for giving me a chance to speak. I appreciate that. We are new to the town of Darien. We purchased our home in January of this year. During the purchasing process, my husband and I were informed that occasionally we would receive water in our backyard on Hecker Avenue. No water in the house. We flooded both times in July of 2021 and again recently this month. The first time we weren't happy, but it didn't seem like a big deal. We had about a foot of water. We had a lot of damage. We were going to get through it. The second time we had closer to 5 feet of water in our basement, to the point where my husband had to wade into the water and turn off the electrical panel so that the house didn't catch fire. And we have 3 children sleeping in bed that we didn't want to wake. We didn't want emergencies. We didn't want to evacuate. So we did what we needed to do to keep our house safe. Right behind our house is Cherry Street, where those evacuations occurred. Our fence, which is multiple feet high, was completely submerged to the point where my kid's sandbox was getting ready to float over the fence into my neighbor's yard. The water was significant. It literally looked like we built a moat around our house. The amount of water coming off 95 down Freight Court directly at our house was going so fast, it lifted my driveway and shifted it into Hecker Woods. It's gone. This is a problem that really needs to be addressed. There's currently an open petition on change.org asking the town to address it. I've sent the petition to all the Board of Selectmen tonight with a download of all of the signatures that are currently there. There's 196, I believe, as of the last count. This is a problem that many town members are having, and they're taking it seriously, and they really want the town to do the same. The last time I saw a flood mitigation committee meeting, according to the minutes recorded on the town website, was in 2010. I'm fairly certain the problem has been around for some time, and should be actively working on it. And I'd like to ask that you do that and you pay attention to it and you address everybody's concerns. We have little kids, 7, 5, and 2, as
30
well as my
seconds.
neighbors. And that's what it comes down to, is making sure that Darien is protecting the community, the families. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melissa. I want to thank everybody who came to this meeting tonight. Each and every one of your tales of flooding is really heartbreaking to hear, and such tremendous personal loss that I know that all of us on the Board of Selectmen, really take to heart what you're sharing with us tonight. I hope that if you have some extra time, that you'll join us for our Board of Selectmen meeting, which we will be convening immediately after the close of this meeting, where we will be hosting our Department of Public Works professionals, the chairman of the Flood Mitigation Strategy Committee, and the director of Planning and Zoning, who are going to talk generally about flooding and regulations and where we've come from, what we've done, where we're going, what possibly we can be doing in the future. So if you don't have time to join that meeting this evening, it will be recorded for TV 79 replay. It'll be a very important informational session. So again, thank you all very much for being here, for sharing your stories with us, and we certainly take this to heart, and we'll be working diligently to do what we can to help mitigate floods in the future. Thank you very much.